Hello students. In the previous video, we discussed on physical adsorption, where physical forces are involved. But in the chemical adsorption, we are going to discuss that chemical forces, that is strong ionic bonds, are involved. Therefore, such adsorption is called as chemical adsorption. Here we can see in the figure, gaseous particles are the adsorbate, and here the surface is shown, that is adsorbent, and we can see that the particles of adsorbate are attracting toward the surface of adsorbent, and here the force of attraction is actually a strong force of attraction, and which we called as a chemical bond. That means chemical bond formation is taking place between the particles of adsorbate with the particles of adsorbent. The chemical bond can be a ionic or covalent. So these bonds may be ionic or covalent. So we can define the chemical adsorption as when the particles of adsorbate are held to the surface of the adsorbent by chemical forces, or we can say chemical bonds. Therefore, the adsorption is called as chemical adsorption. Because of the strong chemical bonds between the adsorbent and adsorbate, it have high enthalpy of adsorption. As we learnt in physical adsorption, it have low enthalpy, but in chemical it is high. Since here is an chemical bond formation, therefore only the specific adsorbate can get adsorbed on the specific adsorbent. That means it is highly specific in nature. It is irreversible because here there is a chemical bond formation. That means it involves a compound formation. For example, adsorption of oxygen gas on the carbon, which can be shown here in the figure. It is given in the equation. We can see there is a formation of compounds like carbon monoxide or carbon dioxide. Therefore, we can say that here there is a formation of a compound takes place. So, it is irreversible in nature. In this, only unimolecular layers of adsorbate get adsorbed on the surface of bond. But we have learnt in the physical, there is multimolecular layers can be formed, but here only unimolecular layers of adsorbate get adsorbed. As we learned in the physical adsorption, surface area is greater, then the greater will be the extent of adsorption. In the same way, here also the chemical adsorption also depend upon the surface area. Greater the surface area, greater will be the extent of adsorption. Therefore, charcoal is used as very good adsorbent because its porous structure. That means greater surface area. As in the chemical reaction, initially a sufficient energy is required to form an activated complex. That energy is called as activation energy. So, we can say that it requires high activation energy. Effect of temperature. Chemical adsorption first increases with the increase in the temperature up to a certain extent, and then it decreases regularly. Now, why it happens? Why it first increases and then decreases? Because initially the increase in the temperature is used as an activation energy. Therefore, there is initially an increase. But later on, the molecules get greater energy than the activation energy. Therefore, they start to leave the surface. Then we can say that adsorption decreases. So we can say that rise in temperature increases the extent of adsorption initially, but then later on it get decreases regularly. Nature of adsorbate. As here chemical reaction is taking place, that means reactivity of adsorbate take place an important role. That means greater the reactivity of adsorbate, greater will be the adsorption. So we can say greater the reactivity of adsorbate is will be the formation of bond, greater the adsorption. So we can conclude this chemical adsorption by writing the points once again here. We have learned that it have very strong force of attraction, that is chemical bond, and it have high enthalpy of adsorption. Because of the chemical bonding, it is highly specific in nature, and it is irreversible nature because there is a compound formation here, and a monomolecular layer is get adsorbed, and it increases with the surface area. It requires high activation energy, and it increases with the temperature. At last, the reactivity of adsorbate is important because greater the reactivity of adsorbate, greater will be the formation of chemical bond. That means greater will be the adsorption. So in this way, we have concluded the chemical adsorption. Now you need to compare the chemical adsorption with the physical adsorption, which we have done in the previous video, and you need to differentiate between the physical adsorption and chemical adsorption. So go through both the videos and do a comparative study between the physical adsorption and chemical adsorption. Okay, in the next video we will be discussing on the effect of pressure on the adsorption. So thank you everyone.